A very good evening to all our viewers. Thank you for joining us on this Monday edition of the Evening Review. My name is Taiwa Jabela, your host for tonight. Let's have a look at some of the headlines in tomorrow's Namibian Sun. Tonight on the show, we are welcoming back a regular face in the person of Dimbulukeni Nauyoma, who usually come to this platform as an activist of the Affirmative Repositioning movement, but today he is coming in a different capacity because he is coming from Property Group Save Namibia, a housing scheme that he and others are busy with, and we want him to share more light on that, especially in light of the current housing crisis in Namibia. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Taiwo, and good evening to you, and good evening to
the viewers.
Yeah.
Yes. So, what maneuvers are these? We only know Dimbulukeni the activist. Now this Dimbulukeni the businessman. What is this concept?
Dimbulukeni remains an activist throughout. Yeah. Depending on which spaces. Yeah. Tomorrow when we need to discuss matters of football, yeah. I'm an activist because young people are involved in football. So yes. We become very much passionate about our activism. Yeah. That remember that leading protests and being at the forefront of advocating for issues as it relates to society just contributes a specific sector. Yeah. But remember, there is a powerful thing that we still need to recover as black people in particular, that is owned by 5% of our people. Now, what is said is that there is about few limited white compatriots, as some call them, but we call them white monopoly capital, that sit in a boardroom to discuss the housing prices, at what rate people must get these houses, how many must be serviced. In fact, they have organized themselves so well under the so-called construction industry, and they have managed to corner politicians from local authorities, and then they determine now the means of production, when and how it must be divided. So this warranted a very radical intervention in which we have studied the process along the years that we have been at the forefront of the housing activism to understand what goes into the land, how the land is brought about, how the land can be delivered to a person, and what other mechanisms can we then use. Because remember, white monopoly capital is looking at capital. Capital is profit. So they are not interested whether Toivo is able to afford or not afford. Before I see Toivo, when Toivo comes to me, I must see, okay, 2 million. I think this is a 1.5 million person. So I'm no longer looking at Toivo and saying it's a family man who must provide shelter for, and remember now we must put in black tax and all those things. So what we've done is that we've studied the economy, we've studied the real estate industry, and conceptualized it into how best and how practical can we do. Remember when Che Guevara when others took over in Cuba, when he was in charge of the Ministry of Industrialization, he was at the forefront of nationalizing and ensuring that the means of production is at the helm of the people. So what we are simply doing, we are following in the footsteps of Che Guevara and saying, we are now at the forefront of the housing sector, where we have understood the means. Now we must implement in the shortest time period to ensure that we translate that land to the people. So we've come together as a group of young people with technical expertise. So it's not people from the street, people with no understanding. It's people with credible reputation, people who have been in this industry for over 20 to 30 years, with the passion of delivering housing. Remember that you would always have a set of engineers who are at the periphery because their ideas are not welcomed by the 5% that sits in the boardroom and make these decisions.
Indeed. So then the initiative is now taking off. I see there's quite a hype around it. I had Michael Amshalelo on these chairs a couple of months ago, and he sort of touched on how this concept would work and how it is cheaper compared to others. What can you tell us about that?
Well, you see, the current housing prices, and I invite the viewer to go and Google, because we must be educated young people. We must be informed. We must be able to check, cross-reference, and say, okay, this thing, is it realistic? No, this one, can it work? No, that guy is lying. So the current housing market in the city of Windhoek, when you look at Rocky Crest, the last sales that took place, it's 1,200 per square meter. That is a service land. If you go to the one that brought a crisis and a lot of divorces, that is Academia next to UNAM, that one was selling at about 3,500 per square. So, and you realize at that time is when Namibia's housing prices were second to Dubai, and were 30% more expensive than Cape Town. Can you imagine the beautiful view in Cape Town? All the Namibians know Cape Town so well because we're fascinated to go there. And you look at Windhoek and it's setting, and a lot of mountains. Yes, it's nature, but still, why should it be that expensive? So, when you look at those pricing, and you look at Elisenheim, and they're selling at about 1.8 to 2,000 a square, and it's about 400 square meters. Now, when you look and analyze the property market, you sit and you say, how do you think these factors come together to make land expensive? Remember, when a guy who's a developer goes to the city of Windhoek and is allocated 25 hectares of land, all this guy gets is a letter by the municipality, takes this letter, go to any financier who's willing and sees the bankability of this concept that this person has, get the money, put it in. Now, over a period of time, what politicians used to do, because some of them were used to bribes and people never used to pay those bribes, they delay this process. If you delay the process, the loan that was borrowed against accumulates interest. So at the end of the day, the land pricing becomes expensive to the end user. So irrespective of where you look at it, and when this guy goes and borrows this money to develop these properties, whether they even do it on record time, remember the financier would add a percentage of how much he must get. If I give you 5 million today, at least I expect in the next 5 years, at least 15% or 5% year-on-year interest. Now, the guy who's the developer now needs to make a living because he has kids, he has people that he's employing, he needs to make money. So on top of that 15% or 5% year-on-year, he adds another 3% year-on-year interest. So at the end of the day, the value of the land, yes, goes up, but who bears the consequences is the end user. So it becomes unaffordable. So what we've looked at and say, in Property Group Save Namibia, what is the first thing that we need to do? We need to acquire this land. Get the land, pay for the land. Once you pay for the land, you can now determine and say, what are the township establishment requirements set out for me? At least 20% must be utilized for roads. You must have, in every 25 hectares, at least 5 to 6 public open spaces. Why? The reason why our flats, riverbeds are turned into flats in Windhoek is because politicians have become to utilize spaces that were supposed to be for recreation, for business purposes. So you must then create a specific percentage on businesses. So lastly, property developers then make a lot of money from the amounts of development in terms of the plots that are available. So what they do is that they want to maximize as many plots as possible so that they earn returns. So what you then do is that you cut it short and make sure that the town planning, that's why the town planning act is very important, and regulations for township establishment. So it guides the process on how many people that you put on there. That is why now the guys have become smarter and they want to do densification. So you utilize a small space, put up blocks of flats, to enable what they call now densification, so that you have more people on one space. So, but what we are doing now is to say, when you look at all that area, and in our layout, we have really considered the township establishment regulations, and we have also made sure that, yes, you can densify, but densify properly. So, of course, there will always be a young person who has no interest in acquiring a 500 square meters of land. Somebody would still be just in Windhoek for 6 months because they came to work here and they still need to go back home. You must make provision for those people. There will always be people who says, no, I believe in staying with my pet and my one child because I'm a single parent. What do I do with a big, huge 700 squares or 400 squares or 600 squares of a plot? So you need to cater for those needs. And we've also looked at and said, look, some people are looking essentially for retirement places. Some are looking for places where, you know, it's safer, it's convenient, there's peace, there's tranquility, and you have access to nature. So that is why when we have acquired that Brakwater plot, we've then decided to call it a Brakwater development because it offers and speaks to the needs of the people. Who are the needs of the people that we're talking about? We're talking about the basic, ordinary young Namibian or a basic domestic worker, security guard, petrol attendant. It doesn't mean that because the guy is a security guard, he does not require to have the type of life that any other person can afford to have.
In terms of those structures, Dimbulukeni, what are we looking at? Is it prefabricated material? Is it how big are the units and stuff like that?
Well, the most important thing is that we still believe that Namibia is a country that has material and raw material that can produce and sustain our current livelihoods and standards of living. We still believe that in our current setup, we have not really experienced these natural disasters that requires us to alternatively switch to alternative building material. Yes, it's perfect that we can do that. And we must explore those type of settings. But in as far as where we are now, we're still using conventional materials or normal ways of constructing and putting up structures. Maybe just for the benefit of the viewer, in our first option that we had in our first phase, we had domestic workers, security guards, petrol attendants, who would settle for a one-bedroom house that would sit on a 500 square meters plot. So that one-bedroom house went for 195,000. So 195,000 can be paid over a period of 10 years. So if you do the mathematics, this person would be essentially paying 1,125 per month. And that is how affordable we're talking about. So the person has a 35 square meter structure built with conventional building materials and still has room to expand. Why are we giving the person 500 square meters? It's because that the limit, we can never limit our people's thinking. Because if we go to the villages, the security guard has managed to put up a 3-bedroom structure. Well, it took him some time to get there. So why are we not allowing the very same person to do the same thing and have that potential to do it here in Windhoek? Why people are not building, it's not because that they don't have the money. People are not doing it because they don't have security of tenure. So what we are offering them a full title to that piece of land. That 500 square meters, even if they die today, would still remain in his estate, would still remain in his bloodline, would still remain, we're not conventional people about wills and stuff like that. So when they meet under a tree at the village, they would decide who must inherit it. And they get it for that. So we are offering between 500 to 735 square meters across the board. That is the first option. The second option is to say, look, essentially you cannot build houses for everybody. There would be a young couple that has just gotten married. My good friend Matthias, I hope, is also bringing his application. So once he gets married and he wants to settle down and he wants to live outside Windhoek, how do you cater for that person? Matthias would have essentially had a brilliant idea on how he wants to construct his house, in what type of structure he wants to put up. So I can't limit him to my thinking. So we've opened it up and we said somebody can acquire a piece of land and they can put up the type of structure that they want at their own conventional time, at their own space, at their own model. you know? So you don't constrain the person into your conventional thinking. So, but how do you then do that? Because we were speaking about pricing earlier. 1,200 per square meter, about 3,000 per square meter, 1,800. That excess already is blocked. And it requires this person to go to the bank. So what is it that we are introducing that is new? We are now saying, because we have the land, we can enter into a purchasing agreement where I can give you this land, yes, first unserviced, because I'm anyways going to service it because I'm putting up an estate. So after I've serviced that land, all I present to you is the cost of servicing. But I don't present it after I've serviced the land. I've done the predetermined calculations, and I'm telling you, I have a team of guys, of quantity surveyors, your civil guys who work on a daily basis. Every day they wake up, they are thinking about the best quality material in the market, but at the best rate that can be offered now. So therefore, we have managed to work in the costing already, and you getting it at cost. So we've worked in the costing, you're getting it at cost, and we give you the cost price now, so that when the land is serviced and is transferred onto your name and you have your full title, you then start making that contribution of the servicing cost. And that is within a period of 10 years. So it then, on a 500 is about 325,000. That 325,000, you then take it over a period of 10 years, you just simply pay 2,700 a month. So it then doesn't force you to immediately go to the bank. But what does it do that people are not speaking about? What are the underlying factors? Now, let's assume you're a young businessman and you have this land.
Briefly before you're going to break.
Yes, so once you have that land, the value of that land adds a portfolio to your assets. And it boosts you and gives you some credit worthiness. For somebody who doesn't now look you or grade you on just by your salary. You have at least something that you can say, on top of my salary, this is the net worth that I have. Because this asset possesses a specific value. So that is in a nutshell why we are also providing this land serviced to the person to enable them to participate in the greater scheme of things and the economy in particular.
Indeed. We go for a quick break and then return for the second half of the show. We continue our conversation with Dimbulukeni Nauyoma. Now, Dimbu, people always say, people like yourself, and I'm sure you have encountered this argument 1,000 times in your life as an activist, where people say, oh, people who go into politics, they are aiming to enrich themselves. People who are in activism are enriching themselves. In your case, as AR activists, there was this whole thing about you guys getting land in Hendy's Bay and so forth. I think Ndangwa was something like that also. And that helped cement the belief of some that indeed these boys, as they call you guys, these boys are just in for the dollar. In light of this development that you guys are pursuing now, how do you navigate away from that narrative when you are involved in that business?
Everybody will always have an opinion.
Yeah.
The bigger question in the greater scheme of things is that, do you listen to pedestrian views and comply? Because surely nobody else is doing it.
Yeah.
So accumulating wealth, for example, and people will always have a problem with people accumulating wealth. Why? If we are in the family and there's a guy who just got a job, instead of us being grateful that this person is now going to relieve us from some responsibilities in the family, we're actually trying to, hey, how much does he earn? So it now comes to the level of respect at the family gathering. So hey, they say a new guy who's entering, so let's find a way to block him out. But our level of activism is really ideologically centered. To say, look, what is the ideological posture of myself towards the economy? I'm a black young man. I will never worship a white man. But the setting is that we must worship white monopoly capital because they own 5% of this economy, whether we like it or not. White people in this country will go to bed sleeping and they will still make millions. But we have no problem with it. Until a black person brings an idea to help us, instead of us thinking about how do we benefit. And this is the greatest part of the development. It's not about Dimbulukeni Nauyoma. We've said, let us open up the development and say, why are we saying that let's create service land that we give to young people earlier? Is so that they can participate in the economy and accumulate wealth. Why are we opening up for people, for example, our apartment, we have an apartment phase where you have ownership, co-ownership, and rentals. So rentals is where you put in the 25,000 and you earn $1,000 a month after they are constructed and somebody who's living there, and it earns you 12,000 a month, a year, for the rest of your life. People went to buy shares in companies. They are today earning 60 cents after dividends was declared. Some will be shocked that the others were going to go for 3 years without declaring dividends. But at least with 25,000 that you've put in, what the bank does, takes your 25,000, runs to the market, invest in gold, get the returns in gold, and be able to grow with that money, build massive big buildings from your money, and guess what you get after that? 5%.
5%.
So 5% of 25%, do the maths. And remember, when somebody then comes to you with this concept, what is the first thing that they do? What is in it for him? I'm sure in our activism, we've been able to prove that if we wanted to get rich, I used to work for a bank. I turned down a job giving me, after deductions, 25,000. I was going to head the specific department because I was in charge of a program in a transition at the bank when they moved to a new system. We were the guys who were ushering in that system. I packed that and I said, I'm never going to work for a white man. Why? It's a revolutionary conscious decision that a person takes. And so we are going to confront white monopoly capital heads on. But it makes no sense if I am going to confront white monopoly capital alone and accumulate 5 million or 10 million, and I must now be worshipped by people. No, that guy is rich. Yeah, Grootman is the boss. You now have, what do they call it now? It's almost December. They say ice boys. Ne? So I will have maybe 10 ice boys that are going to run for me to bring ice. No. Then we are colonizing the young people, and black people in particular. So our development, the aim is to say, can we pull 5, 10, 20 young people together, and we make them a symbol of society?
Symbol of society. To
say that, if this thing can work for these 20 people, can these 20 people now birth another 20? We must have a strategic plan. We have no economic strategic plan in this country. Young people, yes, we are on Twitter spaces and we are all in the WhatsApp groups and all over. What are we looking at? We are looking at, okay, Vaino Ipondoka has X amount of millions, he's now going to Dubai. Okay, if he goes to Dubai, what happens? We are supposed to take an opportunity and say, okay, Vaino, from your 20 million, how do we, as 20 of us, benefit at least even 3 million? And we help you grow, and we grow a chain together. So we need to demystify the issues of saying, when Toivo comes with a project, Toivo wants to get rich. No. It's not about Toivo getting rich. It's about how do we collectively support Toivo, be part and parcel. This thing, we are behind you. No, we must be in the same line and moving together.
Yeah. So now, are you against white capital monopoly or capitalism itself? Because that is an ideology itself.
Yes.
And, I'm asking this question because capitalism is associated with profits.
Yes.
And obviously what you are doing is not charity, is something you want to self-develop, but also to empower your community. And that comes with some windfalls.
Yes.
So white capital monopoly or capitalism as a whole, which one are you against?
We are guided by revolutionary morality. And revolutionary morality wants us to never commit class suicide.
Yeah.
So when you commit a class suicide, is that you are unable to associate to your peers. Ne? You can have 20,000 in your account. This is the worst thing about money, ne? When you are not prepared for money.
Yeah.
So a guy wakes up and tomorrow he has 20,000 in his account. I can assure you he's going to insult the whole community. Even his friends, he's now having ice boys, you know, lighties, all these things.
Yeah.
But what we are saying is that we are finding ourselves in a space of socialism.
Yeah.
Socialism is saying that, yes, we find here at the extreme right are capitalist people who are ruthless. And these are the guys who are in the boardroom who are seeing Toivo as a 1.5 million person, as opposed to Toivo as a human being looking for shelter.
Yeah.
So we are now moving all the way from there, and we find ourselves here. We are not at the center where government must do everything. We are just between government, capitalism. We come at the center, where we are now confronting one another and saying, so how do we distribute the means of production? So government's stake is to make sure that, yes, there must be a road that is passing.
Yeah.
There must be a clinic. But when government is unable to do that, how do we organize ourselves as people to bring these services to one another?
Yeah.
That is why we are running a social concept at the Bragwater development. If we wanted to run a capitalist agenda, the prices are there. Elisenheim, just 6 kilometers from where we are developing, charges 1,800 per square meter. I'll charge the same. But because remember, all I need to do is be a black face amongst white people. And we start eating together because the circle is still small. And that is why we are being fought on a daily basis. In fact, they have now deployed fellow black people to fight us. So they are there. One was saying, no, these boys, remember they had lent a drum. But if you Google lend a drum or lend a dollar campaign, yes, that $1 we used to put in the drum. Some are saying, no, I've put in 2,000. Do they not even put more than 2,000 that they put there? Why? Because we believe that the young people at UNAM at the time, the SRCs, came together to say, how do we support this project of the president? Because it was signed by the president together with us. So we supported those things. Now they are trying to pick and say, no, this one is what, this one is what. They cannot never be trusted.
Yeah.
But in our fight against capitalism, those that are at the forefront of capitalism are white monopoly capitals, as aided by our fellow black people. Remember, a publication ran how the pension fund is administered and where the money is. Can you believe you are a pensioner and you have shares in a serious company overseas, but you hardly benefit directly from it? Why? Because they've created people who must benefit on behalf of you. So what we are simply saying is that in our fight towards attaining genuine economic emancipation in our lifetime for our people, is that we must, yes, go through these spaces. We have encountered a numerous amount of rejections to get to where we are. But we persevere and we fight on because we know that we're not doing it for ourselves. We are doing it for our people.
I have one more question. I think your point is clear. The last question then is, like I introduced you earlier, you are not speaking in your AR capacity today, but it's only to be an injustice if I don't pose any question to you in the context of your movement. Joe Bampanda has bid his farewell to the people. He said, adios, residentes, and just sum up briefly how you would describe the Windhoek city under the mayorship of Affirmative Repositioning. A lot of questions being asked. This was not delivered, and this what. Maybe if you can give us context and summary of that.
Yes, I would summarize the mayorship or Windhoek leadership under the progressive forces.
Yeah.
Because it's a collective effort. When we lose focus, when we want to pinpoint a person and say, no, this is the mayorship of Dimbulukeni. But Dimbulukeni is a team that assists him to attain what he does. So when Brakwater development is up and running, they can't say it's me. The onus is on everybody that has been there. So what is the progressive forces have been able to do amidst the antagonistic forces that were at play seemingly days after inauguration? You would be able to see that when we took over the leadership of Windhoek, it was under an intense atmosphere. Huge expectations, yes. Have we met them? We've managed to build hope. And building hope is a very expensive commodity, which was lost under the Southwest Africa leadership. So what we've managed to do is bring back that expensive commodity as the progressive forces to people of Windhoek. Now people are hopeful that there can be change in Windhoek. So that is the first thing that we've managed to achieve as the progressive forces. Secondly, we've managed to bring about processes of transparency that aided to the hope. Remember, somebody was saying, yeah, but we have good plans, we have good what? Remember, when you want to transform a big institution such as the City of Windhoek, you must lay a good foundation. You can never build on the foundation of those that have left. Because ideally, if they've been failing, you are building on failure. Why is it, and this is the psychological question that people must realize when the chain was rejected. It's a sign of symbolism to say, and the chain is in fact associated to the Queen of England, so, and the gods of England. So when you wear that chain, you are pledging your alliance to England. So that is what people must get. I'm in Namibia. Why must I pledge alliance to those guys who are there instead of pledging alliance to people who are in Okuriangava, people who are in Mbwari Totina? So we have managed to do that. The fourth thing that we must take away from this thing is that the process of stabilizing Windhoek is a critical aspect that the progressive forces are hard at work in making sure that Windhoek is stable. So how do you stabilize Windhoek? You are coming in an environment where it's toxic, where strategic executives have built camps to fight one another. So without a substantive CEO in the City of Windhoek, you are seemingly just setting yourself up for failure. That is why it was very important to ensure that there's a substantive person who can deal with the issues of Windhoek and transformation at the helm of it. You would see that the Mayoral Fund, for example, has done numerous social responsibility issues, aiding not these things of small anyana things of just moving, but we are tackling the issue of GBV, for example, and it has been alarming in Korea Hub. Why is it that people are saying, let's put mobile police stations around Windhoek, in particular in the informal settlement, is to ensure that people have access to these facilities and services that the city is providing. So in a nutshell, the progressive forces have done exceptionally well. They have, in my view, without prejudice, have done beyond what I've expected them to do in the first year. Many believe in these Western things about first 100 days. What do you do in 100 days? You are just getting to know the institution.
I hear you.
You need to have motive forces who are support. And in fact, what you have managed to do is transform some of those antagonistic forces to become motive forces. Now people are speaking about Windhoek. People in Southwest Africa are actually saying, but I think there's something that we have been able to be doing which is wrong. Let us learn from what others are doing and support that work. So for you to get a pure SWAPO supporter to say that we must give pledge and alliance to the current leadership of the City of Windhoek, it's done exceptionally well.
It's done exceptionally well. Dimbulukeni, thank you very much for coming to the show today.
No, thank you very much, Toigo. And we must continue to have this engagement in
Yes.
the Shebins,
Yes.
everywhere. Let's debate robustly
No,
and not see each other as political enemies, but we must debate. In fact, let's open up the spaces, and we must park politics at some point and debate the economy, because this is where the bread and butter issues are really lying under.
Indeed, indeed, sir. That is Dimbulukeni Nauyoma saying we must robustly engage each other, put politics aside from time to time and engage each other. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation like I did. Good night.